Good evening and welcome to Normal Island. I'm Ben Mclaine. It's been a while since I've hosted a show and I am fucking hyped tonight because I am joined today by somebody who I personally admire a lot. Kieran Andrieu has come on. Thank you so much for coming on, Kieran.
That's a very sweet thing to say, Ben. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm in a crappy hotel room because I'm in transit, so I don't want your viewers to think these are my curtains. And if you could see the Jenga tower of things that my laptop is sitting on top of, the best we can hope for is that my laptop doesn't tumble. But great to be here with you.
Thank you. Yes, stands for cameras and lights and microphones and things. They're just the bane of my existence. Like, it's a nightmare when you've got to like get your camera level. Are you sat on a chair at the moment, or are you sort of?
I am sat on a chair. I'm sat on a chair, yeah. So I have that advantage at least.
Get them level, yeah. I've been there, done that from hotel rooms. Yep, it is horrible. But that's why we appreciate you coming on all the more. Right, should we get on with what's coming up on tonight's show? So, Reform's Birmingham rally. Britain apparently needs reform, but workers don't need a work-life balance. Wes Streeting tried to scrub his hands clean, but he knew about the genocide. And Reform UK whine about being rejected by a Welsh university. Don't forget you can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member. And with that, let's go on to our first story. So we're going to do something a bit different, right? Imagine for a moment that we owned a casino. For the next few minutes, we are casino owners, and we want to make as much money as possible, right? That's our goal as the casino owners. We want to maximize our profits. There's a lot of tricks that casino owners use to get people to spend money, right? In some cases, they will make sure that no light gets in, so they won't have any windows, and they'll often make it so that there's no clocks on the walls or anything like that. They'll put confusing layouts in the casinos which sort of naturally draw your eyes to the gambling machines as you search for an exit. Weird carpets that make you look in certain directions and things like that. They've always got these very slick marketing people dressed in suits, smiling suited advertisers with pearly white teeth, and some allegedly play with oxygen in the rooms, the ones that are linked to hotels. So like the hotel above will pump oxygen into the room so you can't sleep. So you're more likely to, or I should say our clientele tonight, our clientele is more likely to go, I can't sleep, I might as well go down and throw some chips into a machine. And speaking of the chips, you make sure that people don't trade in money, but these sort of bright-coloured chips that dissociate you from the consequences of your choices and your scepticism. I'm not spending £50, I'm spending a little bright orange chip, right? And continually, what casinos do is waive the possibility of money or prizes. They show you winners in front of you so that you forget that the system is rigged in our favour and instead focus on what would happen if you did win. And that's how you talk to the clientele, right? Rather than talk about your odds of winning, let's think about what would happen and what you do with that money if you did win. Let's just have a go. You don't need sleep or rest. Come play the slots with your mates. We've built less exits and less clocks, and not everyone will like that. The exits are expensive and we need to cut the budget on doors and clocks. It's getting crowded because people can't find the exits, but that's not our fault. Why worry about anything outside when we've built this little world for you? The slot machines are built for your enjoyment. You've got nothing to worry about from the slot machines. Unlike the previous owners, we'll be fair. Just have a go. Just give it a go. Just keep that metaphor in your mind for a moment as I talk about what I wanted to talk about. So the Reform Party held a live event on Monday with their supporters in Birmingham, and Nigel Farage was kind enough to Nigel Farage was kind enough to sum up the gathering of Reform's best and brightest in a single phrase for us.
As the rubbish piles up on the streets, it's said there are rats here today, the biggest that have been seen since the Western Front many years ago.
I couldn't agree more on that one. And of course, Farage was running his usual nonsense about how immigration is to blame for all of the problems that were caused by austerity and cuts.
We say Britain is broken and Britain needs reform. And it doesn't matter where you look. It doesn't matter where you look. Just look at our public services. The NHS, just as one example. It's literally impossible for the NHS to cope with the level of population explosion that has happened in this country over the course of the last 20 years.
You see, there's no problem with the number of exits in our casino. There's no problem with the management of our casino. It's just impossible to cope with this number of people. It's just impossible to solve this problem, right? It's a convenient lie for a Thatcherite like Farage. Cuts aren't the issue. It's all about immigration. It was never about cuts and austerity. But in reality, of course, the NHS has been through the largest funding squeeze in its history since 2009, and this 2024 Labour government are continuing the Tory failure to fund the NHS properly. Now, you might remember a few months ago that Reform received the largest donation in British political history from a crypto billionaire. That billionaire is Christopher Harborne, and he is a tech billionaire, much like Elon Musk. Previously a Conservative Party donor, by the way. But don't forget, Reform are definitely not the Conservatives, just as we, as the new casino owners, are definitely not like the old casino owners. They were money-grabbing, tricksters, not like us. We will run the casino differently. We'll run it for the benefit of the clientele. And I should also say, Harborne also invested in AI through his companies. He has shares in a company called Singular AI Consulting, among others. And just like slot machines are harmless fun to our clientele, Farage took the time to reassure his casino clientele that AI poses no threat to their jobs if they only understand that the slot machines are built for their enjoyment. They're built to benefit them.
And we will also recognise that not everybody is fit to go to university, to do an ology. That actually in the modern world of AI, people with trades and skills are not going to get replaced by computers. So from the age of 16, boys and girls should at school be able to start learning trades and skills that will last them for their entire lives.
Now, I want to be super clear. I'm not disparaging trades and skills or not going to university. Curtis, who founded Turn Left, literally himself, didn't go to university. More than capable of keeping up with me, that's for sure. And we need better pay and conditions for tradespeople in this country. But the idea that AI can't replace people who are in the trades is a lie. He's lying to you. AI poses a threat to all of us in the wrong hands. It all depends on who owns it, but Farage doesn't want you looking at who owns it. There isn't a job that is free from the threat of automation. That's Farage reassuring the casino goers that the slot machines, they're just harmless fun. They pose no threat to you. So where is the casino exit? You can't find it. Well, we can't have doors everywhere. You'll just have to find it amongst all the slot machines. If you can't find the exits, I guess you're at our mercy.
But it is an attitudinal change that Britain needs. An attitudinal change to hard work rather than work-life balance. We're caught in a trap where there are many at work who would actually be better off on welfare. And we will have to cut the welfare budget. Not everybody will like it.
Without a strong welfare state, you're at the mercy of your bosses. Hungry workers are hard workers who will work for less pay, and Farage is willing to tell you that the welfare budget needs to be cut. His donors are the bosses, the billionaires, but he's your mate. He wouldn't lie to you about the number of exits on the casino to make you accept your seat next to the slot machine. If he was, he would just tell you to ignore the odds and just have a go. You don't need rest, you don't need sleep. You just need to have a go, to change your insolent attitude and accept the slot machines.
But it is an attitudinal change that Britain needs. An attitudinal change to hard work rather than work-life balance. An attitudinal change to the idea of working from home. People aren't more productive working at home. It's a load of nonsense. They're more productive being with other fellow human beings and working as part of a team. I want us to be the champions of have a go Britain. People setting up businesses, people having a go. They may succeed, they may not.
An attitudinal change to hard work rather than work-life balance. That phrase even like upsets some right-wingers because it's just so obviously benefits your boss. Like, it so obviously benefits the people who control your everyday life with no democratic oversight in most cases. And he's wrong about working from home, by the way. A meta-study of 6 studies on telecommuting by Dayanda Sagar University in 2023 found that people are more productive when working from home. Another study by Stanford University on flexible working showed similar results, but with even more benefits to employer and employee. So employees who work from home for 2 days a week are just as productive and as likely to be promoted as their fully office-based peers. On a third key measure, employee turnover, the results were also encouraging. Resignations fell by 33% among workers who shifted from working full-time in the office to a hybrid schedule. Women, non-managers, and employees with long commutes were the least likely to quit their jobs when their treks to the office were cut to 3 days a week. Trip.com estimates that, that's the company who was hiring these workers, estimates that reduced attrition saves the company millions of dollars. Now, Curtis and I slightly disagree on what's motivating Nigel Farage to do this. I thought it was worth mentioning because we had a discussion backstage a little while ago. And Curtis rightly pointed out that the reason as to why people on the right do like, or one of the reasons that people on the right do like to attack working from home is not a productivity issue or a moral issue, it's a landlord issue. So businesses are opting for hybrid working and even fully remote as it's better for them. They don't have to give a portion of their profits to commercial landlords. That's generally a good thing, and I agree with Curtis's assessment of that. But if you stand on the side of those that had no social value and derive capital from acting as leeches from society, you're probably uncomfortable with a world in which less and less people need to be in the office. And it just so happens that Reform receives donations from commercial property firms. Property sector corporate donations to Reform UK include Panther Securities plc, £20,000, Dunmore Properties, £10,000, and Sotheby's International Realty, £100,000. I definitely agree with Curtis that it's a factor in their decisions, but I think this is a more general desire for miserable, desperate commuters to be subject to like surveillance and corporate authority more than specifically about commercial landlords. It's a factor for sure, but I think it's only one of many factors. Those profits, the profits of commercial landlords, seem to have generally recovered from the pandemic. I think it's a cultural and spiritual shift just as much as a commercial interest shift for them. Now, Kieran, this clip of Farage disparaging the idea of work-life balance got some serious pushback. What did you make of what he said and the reaction to it?
I mean, first of all, it's very ironic because Nigel Farage, as we all know, is one of the biggest grifters in British politics. So to see him kind of glorifying hard work and talking about how everybody else is lazy was very ironic, but we live in times in which, you know, if we didn't consider all those ironies low-hanging fruit, we would be constantly preoccupied by them because there are so many of them. I think that Reform is a project, above all else. It's committed to the concentration of wealth in fewer and fewer hands, and is then committed to simultaneously blaming all of the negative consequences of that exponential concentration of wealth in fewer and fewer hands, all of the negative consequences of that on the most vulnerable people in society, right? That's the most succinct way that I could summarize the Reform project. And so when that is your project, when that's your ambition, it makes perfect sense to me that you go after phantoms, right? You chase non-existent problems to keep people focused on those rather than, and this is why your casino analogy was great, by the way. I had such a busy day, I haven't had the opportunity to read the script properly, but I was very taken by it. It keep people focused on things like attitudinal changes and creating new cohorts of allegedly bad people in the population, whether it's, immigrants or refugees or trans people, or in this case, grifters, which is, as I say, very ironic. And making it all about attitudinal change rather than structural change. But that is never going to be reform's MO. Reform is it's so insane how perfectly, purely distilled it is as a kind of emblem of a sort of post-capitalist or neoliberal, kind of hyper-neoliberal dystopia. It's such a dystopian vision of a society as comes out of reform and reform's ideology. It's like big business, all of the worst aspects of big business, all of the most intense harms to human life, whether it's big oil, whether it's tobacco, whether it's casinos, whether it's gambling and all its other forms. All of these things married with a kind of retrenched state and deregulation and as low taxation as possible. Just the total victory of the most dystopian vices married with the billionaire class and the concentration of wealth further and further in the hands of the billionaire class. That is what they stand for. And so, of course, they make it all about attitude rather than structure. And just to chime in on your discussion with Curtis about whether it's large landlords and their vacant properties, or the fear of ghostly vacant properties, and concern about wanting to further wear down workers and ensure that they're further deeper within a surveillance state. I think you're right, it's both of those things. But I also think that there's something maybe a little bit less directly material. I think that there are certain kind of tropes, or if you like, cognitive scripts that the political class or the ruling class inherits over time, or from the previous political class or ruling class. It's kind of handed down to them. And I think bashing the generation below you has great appeal to the generation above you, to some sectors of it. I would say probably those sectors that overlap with reform voting. And the kind of nostalgia for, the politics of memory is a very powerful motivating force in politics. And I think so the kind of politics of nostalgia, the politics of memory, of this kind of glorious time where everybody had to go into work. And if you did have to go into work, why shouldn't your children or your children's children also have to do that? Weren't you stiffed by, your generation of managers or whatever having to go into work physically, while this generation of grifters or idlers gets off much more lightly? It's a kind of culture wars thing, as well as all the other stuff. It's a kind of culture wars trope, which I think unfurls itself quite naturally to reform or would-be reform voters.
Yeah, the generational divide thing has been big. I've seen lots of people talking about that. I saw Helena talking about it, who's a mutual friend of ours. And I do think I was going to ask you a question about about that sort of generational divide, but more generally, are you concerned about the radicalization of older people? Because there's this weird divide. The under 50s are mostly Labour and Green in terms of polling, right? And then you get to the over 50s, mostly over 60s, and suddenly there's just this massive support for reform, and also a sort of I'm not blaming them. Nobody is immune to propaganda, and it's new technology that's coming in for them, but a sort of not understanding, things like AI and I just think a lot of pensioners are targeted by things like GB News, but also things like if you've ever read one of Donald Trump's emails that he sends out to his supporters, very much like the same scam emails that older people get targeted with. And are you concerned about sort of the radicalization of older people and where that might be sort of going?
Well, I think that we've lived through, as to the causes, I think we've obviously lived through a second industrial or post-industrial or technological revolution in our lifetimes. I mean, I'm sure older than you, Ben, but I being right on the cusp, if you like, I can remember pre-internet, just. And of course, I live in a time where everything is based around the internet, and so I initially struggled to kind of bridge that gap and make sense of the world as the internet was developing. And so I can only imagine what it's like for people who grew up and their brains developed fully and they got to like 30 or 40 or 50, and their understanding of information, of, kind of their cognitive biases as much as anything else, all that were fully formed, concretized by the time the internet comes along. Yeah, I think that the phenomenon that you're pointing to is a byproduct as much as anything else of that huge epochal generational shift in the way that information is consumed. And so, to extend it or to stretch the analogy, they're much more susceptible to con artistry and your scam emails that you just talked about. And I think that that's a major factor. I don't think it's the only factor, or maybe even the driving factor. I think that being a good orthodox Marxist, I would say that you have to look more, those technologies respond to the nature of the economy and the global economy and the way in which capital is accumulated and reconfigured over time, or the accumulation is reconfigured over time. And so I think that ultimately as well, there is a big generational shift that isn't just some abstract cultural thing, or isn't just driven by technology, though that's a factor. It's also richly economic, right? So the fact that we stopped building houses and that house prices have skyrocketed as a result, and the fact that that's created such a giant divide between people our age and people their age, and the fact that they have basic resources, many of them, but those basic resources still seem like luxury. And that creates huge resentment, which then goes two ways, right? I mean, that creates a negative feedback loop between the generations. So I think, these things can seem attitudinal, to use Farage's language. They can seem like kind of abstractions of the culture wars, but actually they have very economic, material, and tangible roots.
Yeah, it's hard to notice a tide, a current if you're swimming through the tides. Brilliant, and I do have to go on to our next story, but I do wonder what the current generation of young people are going to be like when they reach the age of, sort of 67. And if you understood that reference, go touch grass, go outside. So let's go on to our second story. So Wes Streeting has decided to throw himself a lifeline as the ship that was the Starmer administration begins to sink. In an attempt to either prove he didn't do anything wrong or redeem himself among Labour MPs, Streeting released all his text messages with Peter Mandelson. BBC News reports, Health Secretary Wes Streeting has released his messages with former US Ambassador Peter Mandelson, as he insists that they were not close friends. Among them are messages from March 2025, where Streeting said he thinks he is toast at the next election. We can only hope. And others where he criticised the government for having no economic growth strategy. Writing in The Guardian, Streeting said he had decided to publish the messages after a weekend of smear and innuendo that I have something to hide. The Health Secretary said he thought Lord Mandelson's appointment was a good move at the time, but admitted he did not think enough about the appointment or the past that was known. His reaction is how they're going to explain every cruelty and mistake that blunder that they've participated in. It will be a banality of evil approach. I just didn't think hard enough about it. And this is the same Wes Streeting that had to apologise for calling Corbyn senile like a few years ago, 2022 or 2023, saying, whoops, I forgot to think about his ties to a dangerous sex offender rumoured to hold compromat and influence governments, is a terrible excuse for appointing somebody like Peter Mandelson. But that wasn't the worst part. And I know lots of others have covered this, but I wanted to make sure we put our 2 cents in too. The worst part is that Wes Streeting has known this whole time that Israel is openly committing war crimes and that we should be putting sanctions on them. And he said in his own, and he said this in his own messages to Peter Mandelson. The Middle East Eye reports, In the text messages, Streeting, widely considered a leading contender to replace
So my
Starmer
name is
as
Jack
Prime
Anderson.
Minister,
I'm here today with Sarah
if he
Pochen,
resigns,
MP. She's one of the
asked
8 Reform
Mandelson
UK
for his reviews,
MPs. And we've
for
caused
his
quite a
reviews
bit of
on
a
whether
stir this
Britain
week because
should.
we wanted to hold an event at Bangor University
Excuse
in
me.
Wales.
Can anybody else hear
Myself
that?
and Sarah as part of a new Dawn tour, which is touring universities across Britain. And Sarah,
I have absolutely no idea. Sorry about that. I'll start that bit again so to make the edit easy. Excuse me. I wasn't sure if it was just me that could hear that. Apologies, chat. In the text messages, Streeting, widely considered a leading contender to replace Starmer as Prime Minister if he resigns, asked Mandelson for his views on whether Britain should recognise a Palestinian state, which it went on to do months later in September 2025. Streeting said recognition was morally and politically right. Funny what views they hold behind closed doors. Morally, because Israel is committing war crimes before our eyes. Their government talks the language of ethnic cleansing, and I have met with our own medics out there who describe the most chilling and distressing scenes of calculated brutality against women and children. This is rogue state behaviour. Let them pay the price as pariahs with sanctions applied to the state, not just a few ministers. So he knew. He absolutely knew, and he went along with it anyway. Kieran, in your opinion, is Wes Streeting doing this to win people over for a potential leadership bid? You know, sort of, look, it's not so bad, I had my doubts about genocide too kind of thing? Or is this purely about clearing his own name?
So there's two things. So first of all, elsewhere in those message exchanges, it's important to point this out. He talks about how dangerous he thinks it is that this has happened to his electoral fortunes, which is what you're alluding to, Ben, and to the electoral fortunes of the Labour Party. And I just want us to remember, before we focus on Streeting's utter moral abandon, that means that politicians behind closed doors, and Wes Streeting is very pro-Israel, he's always been very pro-Israel. We'll come to that in a minute. That means that the pro-Palestine movement is and has made significant inroads. It has made significant inroads into the corridors of power, even if behind closed doors they speak that way, and out front they speak another way. And we know that the needling of the Israel lobby and so on is a very powerful intercessory force. Nonetheless, this is clear evidence that behind closed doors, very senior Labour Party politicians are fearful of what the pro-Palestine movement has achieved and what it stands for. And I think we shouldn't miss that. We shouldn't miss that particular observation. The second thing is Streeting himself. Yeah, look, I mean, it's what I guess they call a self-own, right? A moral self-own in this case. Maybe a strategic one too, probably a strategic one. He thought that if he did this, he would be able to show the world that actually he is, very concerned about Palestinian rights, and that also he only consulted Mandelson when he thought that it was a matter of strategic importance and not they weren't that chummy and so on. I think it showed in the tone that they were chummy, even though clearly these messages are heavily cherry-picked. But more importantly, it shows very clearly that Wes Streeting put his own career ahead of the lives of Palestinians in Gaza and doing the right thing. That's what it shows, unequivocally. It shows that he was publicly willing, excuse me, I'm going to cough. He was publicly willing to whitewash a genocide for Israel. Let's be absolutely clear that that's what Wes Streeting did. Wes Streeting is obviously a, critical actor in the Labour Party, one of the most visible members of Keir Starmer's government, if not maybe the second most visible member of Keir Starmer's government. And for the past 19 months since being in office, he has helped facilitate, in his own way, the genocide in Gaza. No ifs, no buts. He has helped whitewash that genocide. And so for him to then show us evidence that adjacent to his public support of a genocide, he was annotating his own work privately, saying, I know that they're committing war crimes and calculated brutality and frontline testimony and so on and so on, is, I think, more damning than he would have liked to have portrayed himself. So I can only assume that it's a catastrophic and colossal self-own. Whether it will be only reported by the likes of you and us at Navarra and others, in that context and drawing out and teasing out those particular moral or immoral dimensions is another matter altogether. I don't know whether Starmer will limp on like a zombie and whether Streeting will limp on beside him. And when the time comes, he will still jockey for power and try and become the next prime minister or leader of the Labour Party at any rate. I can't say, unfortunately, in the kind of nihilistic times that we live in, that this will fell him as it should, or that he'll fall on his sword for it. But I can say that is what it shows us incontrovertibly.
It makes me think a little bit of Pascal's Wager, weirdly. It's like Wes Streeting is doing a sort of Pascal's Wager. Pascal's Wager, for those who don't know, is if you believe in, even if there's no God, the wager goes, I'll say that I believe in a God so that if there is an afterlife, I'll go to heaven, and if there isn't, it won't matter. And I feel like there's something is, I don't agree with the logic, by the way, but just there's something sort of Pascal's Wagery about it, as though he was messaging Peter Mandelson and sort of releasing these so that no matter what happened, whether the pro-Palestinian movement morally, as they have broken through, or whether the Israelis were successful in their genocide and attempt to bring an 18th century project into the 21st century. I did want to ask, by the way, for those who don't know in the audience, Kieran himself is Palestinian, and I do sort of want to ask if you know, what do Palestinians in the UK make of Wes Streeting as a political figure? Because he has called for he's a member of LFI, but he's called for very milquetoast economic sanctions against some Israeli settlers in the West Bank. But surely, I just think that's wholly inadequate in terms of reaction when Ben Gvir is literally handing out M5 automatic rifles to these genocidal freaks. What's the sort of take among Palestinians?
I think,
if you know,
I think he's broadly regarded as I regard him, which is just a friend of Israel. I mean, he's been a stalwart member of Labour Friends of Israel for many years. He mentioned that in his messages to Mandelson. But I mean, we don't need those messages to know that. He's been very public about it. He's regarded as a friend of Israel or at least was, by the Jewish Chronicle and others. It's true that he had his moments throughout the genocide, but they were completely insufficient and inadequate. And he has a long history of persecuting pro-Palestine figures. So when he was head of the NUS. He was head of the NUS, right? National Union of Students, for a number of years, up until about 2009, I think. So leading up to the student riots and all of that. And when he was there, he was infamous for closing down the accounts of other members of the NUS who were pro-Palestine. And I mean, we're not talking about people who were talking, saying pro-Hamas things or anything like that. We're talking about people who were members of PSC, who maybe went on fact-finding missions to the occupied West Bank, as indeed Labour Party MPs were doing at that time under Gordon Brown. But for Wes Streeting, that wasn't good enough. And I know of several cases personally of him locking people out of their accounts for their pro-Palestine activity, trying to make life as difficult for them as possible, using his bully pulpit as the head of the NUS to do that, right? And so he's got a long track record of doing this. He's obviously seen as complicit as well by virtue of his being part of Keir Starmer's government. And so I just don't think that there's any... He's also a terrible flip-flopper, right? I mean, he might make these... In 2014, I think it was 2013, he tweeted something about Tony Blair being completely beyond the pale. We can't have Tony Blair anywhere near our politics because of the war in Iraq. The man should be in Hague. And then, 10 years later, he's part of a government that is taking consultation from Tony Blair, that is taking advice from Tony Blair, that's taking Blair-era strategists and so on into the fold. So it's impossible to believe that he stands for very much at all. And certainly around Israel, the Palestinian community, as far as I know their view, views him as a total and utter puppet of Israel, the Israeli lobby, and the friends of Israel in the Labour Party.
he's so slimy in so many ways, and honestly, like I genuinely could like keep talking to you about how slimy. Dunking on wedge streeting is a great thing to be doing, but we should probably move on so that we get through our stories and get to the comments. But before we do move on, it's 2026, and we really want this year to be big for Turn Left. We want to be more ambitious than last year and to really put ourselves onto the map. We would like 2026 to be the year where we can have a studio and for our contributors to be paid for the work that we do. That would be wonderful. Your support over the years has been amazing, and we are ready to take this to the next level. We rely on small donations, so if you want to be part of a media organisation that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. By the way, you can also become a YouTube member for just 99p. If you can't afford to do any of that, do not worry. Sharing helps massively. Sharing is absolutely invaluable. Liking, sharing, telling people about us, it's all good. And we're very grateful for all of you, every single one of you, even those who just drop in for a couple of minutes. We really appreciate you. So let's go on to our final story. Right-wingers have been whinging at Bangor University in Wales after Bangor's debating society refused to host a Q&A with right-wing commentator Jack Anderton and Reform MP Sarah Pochin. Yes, that's the same Sarah Pochin who said that it made her angry when she saw lots of black and brown faces in TV adverts and was forced to apologise a few months ago. That's that one. That woman wants to go and answer students' questions about normative ethics, which is what most debates are, for those who don't know. To be super clear, the debating society made the decision themselves, and the university administration was not involved in the decision to deny them. The debating society also don't have the power to ban someone from Bangor's campus, but they did tell them that they were not welcome. Shortly after they received the rejection letter, Jack Anderton posted this video to his Twitter account.
So my name is Jack Anderton. I'm here today with Sarah Pochin MP. She's one of the 8 Reform UK MPs. And we've caused quite a bit of a stir this week because we wanted to hold an event at Bangor University in Wales. It was myself and Sarah as part of A New Dawn tour, which is touring universities across Britain. And Sarah, we've been cancelled by the university. We've been banned. Why is that?
Well, I'm actually not sure if it's a badge of honour, but all I wanted to do with Jack was go and debate with the debating society. How ironic that it's the debating society at Bangor University who will not debate with us, reform politicians, to hear about our policies. They've called us racist, they've called us homophobic, they've called us transphobic. Where is there evidence for any of that?
And I think really what you're seeing, Sarah, is a wider battle about free speech in Britain and across the universities. You know, we've got the political class trying to censor social media and ban social media from under 16s. And you've got universities who are really not doing their duty in protecting free speech for students and the wider public. Universities historically have been a place of free speech and debate, and they're failing.
And if they don't allow debate, if they brainwash the minds of young people, all that means is that in future generations, the minds of our leaders have been brainwashed. It does nothing for democracy in this country, and we will not be silenced.
Well, we're going to keep dialogue with Bangor University, and if they won't host us, then we're going to do it ourselves.
Yeah, just because they're the debating society doesn't mean that they have to debate you. Like, if there was a pizza society, they wouldn't necessarily have to make pizza for you. Or if there was a reform society, they wouldn't necessarily have to scam you. You know, they can choose not to interact with you. Sorry, I showed my brother that clip, and his reaction was, "Who's that fetus?" Which I thought was quite good. I think it's really funny that right-wingers think people are left-wing because they've never heard another perspective before, that universities aren't doing their duty in protecting free speech for students unless they make the students debate you. I love the type of free speech where I have to say yes to every debate with randos from boring socially conservative opinions. The reality is that right-wingers just don't know what free speech is. Sometimes people just don't like you, and that's not a free speech issue. So I decided to go on GB News and tell them that to their faces.
Is that 2 people who are fairly moderate in their politics and, you know, members and supporters of what is the leading political party in Britain have been that were not welcome on university campuses in Bangor, and it's a really unfortunate situation.
Ben, it's a bit of a contradiction, isn't it, if they're saying that they are welcoming opposing views and clashing ideas, for them to then sort of say, well, we're not going to have you on because basically you're all a bunch of racists, which I don't think is fair. Do you think that's fair?
Well, I think that I think that it would be fair to say it's a difficult situation, but I don't think it's fair to say it's a free speech issue. Like, Sarah and Jack are not being locked up for particular opinions they have, right? Free speech is not the same as the right to a platform. Like, I might want to have, you know, to have a slot on BBC Question Time on the panel. That'd be lovely. I'd love that. Most of us here probably would, right? But if they say no, that's not a violation of my free speech. That's just them refusing me a platform. And let's not forget, it was the Debating Society that said no, not the university itself.
I was going to say, sorry Ben, just to interject, but you can come back on this. It's only because they've told them why they've refused them, because they said they're hate and they're this and they're that. So it's not because they're denying them a platform for no reason. Like, if you were going on Question Time, you might be denied a platform because they haven't got enough room. But they're specifically telling you that we think you're hateful, you're homophobic, you're all of these things, which is why you're not going on there.
Yeah, words hurt. I mean, you know, it's a bit like, get over it. Like, the point,
it's
though,
not about
is that
words, but
it is.
But what
it
I
is
think
about.
it is
Well,
about,
you're making it about hurtful words, because clearly it's not a free speech issue.
Okay, Ben, we've heard you. Let's let Jack back in.
I think Ben hadn't finished speaking. That was all. That was all.
No, it's all right.
It's supposed to be a space where you can freely debate and discuss ideas, and that was really one of the original purposes for university. You know, Bangor University is a prestigious university. It's one of the oldest in Britain, and the fact that a debating society refuses to hold a debate. As I said, with one of the two figures in the leading political party in Britain, I think that is a free speech problem.
But what are they afraid of, Ben? Because exactly as Jack said, it's about listening to different viewpoints. Even if you thought they were homophobic or all those things, you would discuss, debate and explain to them why they're wrong.
Well, they can pretty much switch on to any mainstream media channel and hear the dry views of reform being repeated again and again ad nauseum. Like, they don't want to platform a party that wants to cut the minimum wage for young workers. You know, they don't like you. Get over it. It's not a free speech issue. And bear in mind, these are university students. They're not media trained. But you know who is media trained? Nigel Farage, and he's still running away from his debate with Zach Polanski. Zach Polanski's challenged him multiple times. It's like, pick on someone your own size rather than some poor students who just want to decide who they can debate with, which is their right. Surely they're running their own university, like Debating Society. Yeah. I'll post the full debate on our YouTube channel tomorrow with the full debate I had with Jack Anderson on there. Anderton, excuse me, not Anderson, as that was only an excerpt. I didn't have time to mention that Reform's head of policy, Zia Youssef, threatened to defund Bangor University if Reform ever got into power. Now, that is a violation of free speech. So Youssef said on Twitter, Bangor University have banned Reform and called us racist, transphobic and homophobic. Boo-hoo. Bangor receives £30 million in state funding a year, much of which comes from Reform voting taxpayers. I'm sure they won't mind losing every penny of that state funding under a Reform government. After all, they wouldn't want a racist's money, would they? To translate that into plain English, the grubby little unelected bureaucrat is saying that the university should make the students in their debating society, host them, or a Reform government will starve them of their funding. By the way, Bangor University is a world leader in dementia research. So that threat was basically, because you called us some hurty words, we're going to cut dementia research funding. It's the most, like, wild, ridiculous stuff, like absolutely incredible stuff. And he's tweeted about this like 8 times. So that appears to be the Reform position. If a political figure challenges you to a debate, you have to debate them or you're failing to protect free speech. If a political figure wants to debate you and scrutinise your worldview, you have to accept the challenge. Unless, of course, you're Matt Goodwin, who spurned the Gorton and Denton hustings because he said they were biased against him. I'm not going to lie, GB News are pretty biased against me. Like, all three of those people I was talking to there are obviously right-wing. You know, at least one of them, Tom Harwood, plays the neutral moderator, which is good. But GB News are pretty biased to the right wing, Matt. That doesn't stop me going on and challenging them. The least you could do as a leading candidate in probably the most influential by-election that we're going to have this year is answer constituents' questions. So, Kieran, I'm interested. Why do the right wing love the aesthetics of free speech and debate so much, but actually hate the actual practice of free speech and debate?
Because they're pathetic wimps. It's an endless snowflakery with these people, an endless white wine. And I would just say, I mean, first of all, you did very well. I know it's how it is sometimes debating on GB News. It reminds me of a Stuart Lee joke in which he talks about how an entire generation of people conflated political correctness with health and safety legislation. And they just kind of saw the two as interchangeable, right? So they would say, you can't say anything anymore about immigrants and whatever else, and you can't stick your hand in a threshing machine without some bureaucrat coming and telling you off, right? It's like, I always thought of that over the past however many years when these debates were going on. These absolutely maddening, stupefying debates were going on, because it was like, who is going to tell these people? You know, I didn't have any kind of platform back then. I was like, who is going to actually try and tell these people, not absorb it, that this is not a freedom of speech issue or a free speech issue. This is a quibble with free speech. It's a hatred of the reciprocal nature of free speech when free speech is done properly. It's a quibble with the free exchange of ideas and opinions, which is the very thing that they're claiming to be aggrieved about. And so, it was, and then to kind of bring that into the present and to kind of, I suppose, tie a loop on the sinister absurdity. What I always thought and what I always said to whoever I managed to have access to who espoused this view was, come and talk to me about freedom of speech when the police are knocking on your door for saying something. When that happens, I will be on your side. I will say that I find what you say is shitty and offensive, but like a pound shot Voltaire, I will fight to the death for you to be able to say it. And come and complain to me when the police actually, the law intervenes. That's a free speech issue. Toby Young, with your free speech union, that will be the test, not just whether you're willing to support people inveterately punching down, right? And then people responding to that inveterate punching down with their own version of free speech, which is to say expressing their opinion in response to what you're doing, right? And this went on and on and on and on and on. It consumed so much time and energy. We all went mad and we all said goodbye to too many brain cells. And then Palestine action is prescribed. And you can be arrested for saying the words, I support Palestine action. You can be arrested for holding up a sign that says some words, and tumbleweeds from those quarters. Instead, you've got this idiot going on there debating with you, saying that the fact that he can't go to this fucking debate society in Bangor.
Oh.
It is totally plastic. And it's either by design, they either know that what I'm saying and what you were saying is true, or they are so stupid that they cannot grasp the pretty obvious distinction between an assault on freedom of speech and freedom of speech being met with more freedom of speech.
Yeah, he complained at one point that sort of 400 people turned up to protest him, and I was like, that doesn't sound like a free speech issue. That sounds like you being not a very likable person issue. Like, it's just, yeah. I didn't
sounds
ask,
like free speech is in rude health. If 400 people turn up to heckle you and tell you what they think, great, that's freedom of speech, baby. And if that's what you're onto, then you're going to want those 400 people.
literally, I'm so glad you brought up Palestine Action. I was thinking the same thing. And when I was on there, I was like, should I bring up Palestine Action? But it's like, oh, with Nana Queer, sometimes it can be really difficult. But I did want to ask as well, because like I think it would be a little bit different. I would have the tiniest bit more sympathy because university administrations are not elected, right? I think it would be a little bit different if the university administration had decided to ban somebody, right? This is a student union group, like just a group of students. And I think at my university, you had to have like a minimum of 3 people to create a society. So like it could just be like literally like 4 students, and they're like, well, we've only got 4 of us. We don't want to debate these national figures or have them come into our space. We just want to get on with our own stuff. But I feel like that's a very different scenario to if the university had cracked down. Do you think that that's a fair kind of like distinction to make?
Yeah, I think that is an important distinction. Debate societies are organs within, and they're run by the students, and that has to reflect the will of the composition. And if people don't like that, they can run against the students that currently compose the debate society. It's more difficult to see how that could happen with a university. And I think we have to be consistent. If a university was saying, as many universities do, that certain things, certain pro-Palestine sentiments can't be expressed, that if they were saying certain pro-reform sentiments or whatever can't be expressed as well, that would be administrative at the institutional level within a university, and it would be of more concern. But the thing is, and it's important you raise that hypothetical, but the thing is, it is a hypothetical because it basically never happens. University administration is almost always conservative in its outlook. It's almost always leaning towards the other side of things. It's almost always trying to shut down anti-imperialist politics, anti-capitalist politics. If it is trying to shut down, I'm not saying all universities do, by the way. Some have really rich traditions of supporting campus activism. But many, if they do have a kind of authoritarian bent, it's a bent that points in that direction, not in the... Universities are totally strapped for cash. The sector has been under assault for decades, particularly turbocharged over the past 15 years. And they are terrified of stories in the Daily Mail and wherever else of this kind of nonsense. So I would say important hypothetical, almost always hypothetical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it is, and I think it's probably got worse with the commercialization of universities over time. Like I think there was probably a time where there was a bit more kind of left-wing sentiment among university administration. By the way, when we say university administration, it's also really important that we separate them from the lecturers. The lecturers tend to be quite sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, left-wing causes in general. Like I had a few lecturers who held quite right-wing beliefs, but the majority of my lecturers were cool, they were based, they were comrades. We liked our university lecturers. We should probably go on to the comments section so that people get the chance to ask us some questions. I usually mention during the script that we're going to have a comment section. Sorry, I didn't mention that, guys. We're going to have a comment section now, so we're going to bring in Curtis. Are you listening?
I'm always listening, and fantastic show. I have to say though, what a line from Kieran, the white wine mic drops. Very good, very good. Yeah, our chat went a little bit rogue. We've had a lot of curtain comments, which was very funny, but I'm gonna have to show them. And Jim Speaks says he makes a bold claim. Clearly, his curtains. Even though you explain to the audience you are in a hotel, Jim doesn't want to hear it.
Jim, I'm wondering what I can show you as evidence. This is giving away my location, but there we go. Welcome to the Tavistock Hotel, it says. I don't keep that on my desk, I can promise you.
It's fake, it's AI. Right.
Jim's like, well, we can tell your age from the curtains, to be fair. And then with a follow-up, he says this. I'm such a dick. Jim, behave. Jamie Alice says, amazing duo. Of course. Absolutely fantastic. We can't disagree with that. Edward Sexby says, Kieran caught a man that walks it like he talks it.
Very true.
That's very kind.
We had a lot of course, kind kind comments for you. I did want to quickly run through our donos. Kate C gifted 5 turn left memberships. Thank you so much. It means the world to us. The idea that people want to give us money means we must be doing something right. James Holmes also gifted 5 turn left memberships. And not really Rachel Atwood. I must say, a lot of people, is this a trend when people are saying not this person or not really? Is this like a protection thing if like you support Palestine and the police want to come after you? Or is this a bit? I'm not sure. But anyway, not really Rachel Atwood says, in Jersey, a non-Zionist congressional candidate just won her race since AIPAC wasted millions of dollars attacking her soft Zionist opponent, encouraging that was with $5. It's breaking through. It's breaking through. Let's get back to the comments. Benji,
can I read a quick comment? Can I read one?
Please do.
I can see Deus X01Y has said, bringing your own curtains to a hotel makes it even worse. And that is world. I love that. That is world class. That is beautiful. That's negging. I love that.
Mate, they caught you out there. They got you a treat. It put me off there. I can't get my thoughts together. Benji here says Ben looks like Call Me Kevin. No way. I don't know if you guys know who Call Me Kevin is. He's an Irish YouTuber, but he does lots of reacting content, not political stuff.
Google that.
But you do actually look a little bit like him. We should probably, do the comments on the actual stories though.
I'm not insulted by that. I just looked him up. He's all right looking. No, that's fine.
He's not a bad looking guy.
He doesn't look like Gollum, which is great. Okay, let's go.
Becca says in relation to the first story, I'm so chatty at work. If it wasn't a cafe, I'd be screwed. Now, this is the thing in terms of the productivity point. I think that being in the office is actually very unproductive. You have so many meetings, so many small talk chats. Lots of people try and do things to get away with not working in the office. By the way, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. What I'm saying is like the dynamic that you must be watched at all times, that you're being productive, is very, very authoritarian and controlling. But also, like, just because you're in the office doesn't mean you're naturally more productive. And I think that's why a lot of statistics shows that working from home, there's not a massive disparity in productivity.
Yeah. I think I could do either, to be honest. I think I'm sort of a halfway house. I think I'd like to work from home some days and flexible working, which is kind of what I do anyway. But anyway.
I mean, that's kind of what Spec says here. Hybrid working is good for everyone, even the bosses. The only people that don't like it are commercial landlords. I think, obviously, it should be down to the individual. Some people might want to work from home full-time. People like being in the office full-time. I think hybrid is quite nice. The thing is, though, this is something that I don't think can be stopped. It's not one of those things that a political project can end. It's one of those things that happens in the evolution, I would say, of even capitalism, that it's just the way we're going due to technology. And obviously, of course, we had the pandemic. So, like, Nigel Farage can bang on about how working from home is bad. This is something, I think, is just a natural phenomenon that's going to happen. And because it's favourable to business, there's not really going to be major pushback, again, apart from the commercial landlords.
I don't know if he was expecting us to comment there, Kieran.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm too engrossed in these comments. I love them.
Our comments are great.
Great. They really are, yeah.
So Alexander Salins has been on the show before. Is a Green Party member, and if you don't know, was the person that proposed the Abolish Landlords Green Party motion, which of course passed, and that's why abolishing landlords means commercial landlords too. There's so many benefits to abolishing commercial landlords as well as individual landlords. For tenants, it's good for businesses, for actual productive businesses, not the blood-sucking leeches and, quite frankly, bastards on society.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
Kieran's laughing as though what have you seen?
Kieran's in a trance. I think it's all the curtain comments.
Yeah, do you know what? I tell you what, when I do, I never read Navarro comments. I'm always just sat there with Aaron focusing on that, and I don't read the comment. And maybe I should do it more often.
Can you see the comments in the studio?
You can if you want to. I choose not to. I don't know if we're as fun as you guys. I mean, I doubt it looking at all of these. But maybe I should. Maybe I should start reading them.
I mean, you should, but I mean, I'm being biased here. I do think we have the slightly funnier audience.
Yeah, I can believe it.
But to be fair, there's so much crossover between Navara chat and our chat. I recognise so many people in Navara Media than on here. But being biased, I think we're funnier. Well, not us. I mean, the commenters, our lovely viewers. Anon Magen says, I'm an older person, radicalised leftwards. Of course, you pose a really good question there, Ben, about the radicalization of boomers, particularly the 65 plus cohort. When you see the polling, because a lot of people talk about class in terms of polling, the big divide is age. And the number one political party is the Green Party between the ages of 18 and 49, which is crazy. It's not 18 to 24 or 18 to 30. It's 18 to 49, right? 49-year-olds are not old, but they're not young. You know, they're not like spring chickens who are stupid lefties. No, these are people who got houses and kids, and they're realizing that the social contract doesn't work for them. And for 65-year-olds, the social contract worked for them, and now they want to pull the ladder, up beneath them. And I think what was really interesting, you two, when you sort of posited the different reasons in terms of this anti-work from home stuff. Of course, Ben, you said about how me and you have a slight. We agree on all the reasons, but I put more emphasis on the commercial landlordism. And Kieran, you sort of tied it all together about culture and attitude. And it's so true, because I feel like when it comes to the 65 plus cohort, it's all grievance politics. It's like, well, to be honest, apart from protecting your pensions and obviously public services, like there's not much else we can talk to you about apart from attacking young people. And it's so grievance because, once again, the older generation had the social contract. We don't have that. Yet when you have a conversation with older people, typically they'll say, yeah, but I worked hard in my life. And none of us are saying that these people didn't work hard. What we're saying is you worked hard and you got a reward, which is, even before you worked hard, you got the selection of jobs out there which were appropriate. I mean, my dad, he ended up being self-employed, but for a while, he's a plumber, electrician, a labourer, all-rounder, basically. And he worked for a company, and that company trained him up properly, give him all the tools he needed. He was on a 9-to-5 job, basically, really well paid. And he'd get benefits such as, like, after 5 o'clock, it'll be time and a half. After 7 o'clock, it's double time. After that, it's triple time plus a meal. And to bring it back to my personal situation, my first job was at Argos. And on every Sunday, you got time and a half. And my brothers used to work for Argos, and they used to say it used to be double time. Towards the end of my time working there was no time and a half. And the point is, especially like the retail sector, there's no benefits that comes with work. But the kind of jobs older people got were so much better, well paid, lots of benefits. And then, of course, the housing situation, there was no housing crisis. So they could work hard and get a house. We don't have that. Yet, I think reform exists and right-wing conservatism exists to not want the older people kind of sympathizing with our situation. It must be, I'm going to massage your grievance with the young. They're lazy, they're entitled, they didn't work as hard as you.
Yeah, just briefly on that, I think unquestionably, if you look across kind of economic indices, their generation had it better in so many critical ways. And housing and jobs and social mobility was just a lot better, and inequality was less bad, and so on, right? And all of that's true. But I think I know enough people of that age to know that, including some with whom I've really disagreed on the basics of politics about. And I think the problem with creating intergenerational inequality, as well as all sorts of other inequality, is that it creates grievance. If you're not talking about the super rich or the really rich, and you're talking about people who have kind of maybe got a house and assets and a bit of money that all together comes to, I don't know, hundreds of thousands or £1 million, and they feel that they were never rich in their lives, but they just have all these assets which have been pumped full of value by market conditions and by the failure to balance supply and demand and build and all the rest of it. It's very easy for them to get to become defensive, right? And I think that's actually, it might sound a bit off the beaten track in terms of a leftist account of things. We've given the material accounts and stuff, so I think it's legitimate to say this. I think I know enough of those people to know that they get defensive. They know that we feel resentful. They probably also have the guilt. You know, you can't underestimate, I think, the importance of, or the power, the role that kind of fear as a response to guilt plays in like social and cultural life. And I think there is an element of that. I think it's old people or middle-aged people who know that they got a really good break, but are still bitter about lots of things in life. And they're pissed off that there's now a whole generation or 2 generations that are locked out of the things they got, but they don't want to accept that. Many people, you know, people can only, I mean, James Baldwin said some people can only take so much reality. And I think there is an element of we're not going to accept that these young'uns with all their sexual liberation and all their, you know, avocados and all the things that we did, that they are the ones who have a right to be aggrieved. You know, we didn't have X and we didn't have Y, and my life turned out shit for X and Y, or this happened and it was really difficult, because life is hard for more or less everybody, even though I'm not saying it's equally hard, but, you know, and so they can't see beyond their own sense of grievance in that regard. And I do think that their guilt is kind of reverse sublimated into a kind of defensiveness, crotchetiness, fearfulness, anger, bitterness. I think that's all in there. And you're right. Then along comes reform. Then along come these demagogues and political entrepreneurs who say, make of it an ideology, make of it a political doctrine.
Really interesting.
I want to add, I also think it's the end point of Thatcher's legacy. Like it's the sort of like where that generation was going generally, but it does always bear repeating. And I always like to say when we do this whole generation stuff, that we really appreciate those older people who you know, get arrested standing up for Palestinians, or people who are defending Palestinian rights. We appreciate the older people who are proudly left-wing and going out and you know, taking a stand. Like you people are really you know, you're the backbone of our movement, and it's so important in so many ways, because we need to appeal to older people, and telling us how to appeal to your friends and the people like you is really important. My late grandma could sing the Internationale from memory. She was in her 90s. She could sing the Internationale from memory. And my aunt, who would have been in her 60s, almost 70s now, was yeah, she was arrested at the same anti-apartheid demonstrations that Jeremy Corbyn was arrested at. So there are those among the older generation. It's always worth saying, and I know it's like that isn't the trend, and that's why I mentioned it earlier. Generally, older people do have some quite horrific views and have been propagandized, but it is worth giving a little shout out to the older people who are, you know, fiercely left wing, and we love them for it. Yeah,
yeah. Shout out to the based boomers. Leo says the irony is that he thinks this makes him look more left-wing than Starmer. Of course, this is the private messages that Wes Streeting sent to Peter Mandelson, which I think, like, it's odd because he willingly gave them up. And his view, it seems like he was trying to be like, oh, look, I did admit Israeli war crimes. Don't know about the strategy here, but do you think, I mean, look, the difficulty I find with this is, of course, yes, whenever like he thinks there's going to be a leadership election, you can see Wes Streeting pitch himself more to the left. Do you think this comes in part of that? Like, oh, look, hey, look, members, you know, I did criticize Israel just in private. Or is this not part of it?
I think I'll go one further. I think there's a good chance that Wes Streeting wrote those messages knowing that they one day might need to be leaked. I genuinely think there's a chance of that. If you read them, they just read in such a contrived way to me. I might be wrong. I've got no way of proving, absolutely no way of proving that. And I never will have a way of proving it. But I suspect that at least it's possible and it's worth considering. But yeah, I mean, if that is possibly true, then certainly that he was leaking them for that reason is absolutely the case. The guy is desperately scrambling to save his own career. It's a kind of version of the bait and switch that Starmer did. He's trying to take the temperature of the country and Labour Party voters, prospective Labour Party voters. He can see an assault from the left or inroads from the left by Polanski's Greens. He can also see that reform is maybe to a larger extent than he previously anticipated sewn up. And so, it's kind of changing the coding, trying to shift the coding so that, people, and yeah, he probably does think maybe those of us that supported Israel vocally are really on borrowed time. So I better get something out of it. But of course, it has a double function. He's also trying to show that he wasn't in lockstep with or close chums with Mandelson. I don't think it does that personally. But yeah, basically, it's a desperate attempt to try and get ahead of things, to try and put the narrative out on his own terms, and to try and save what he obviously thought was a very promising chance of becoming Prime Minister.
It's certainly a strange political mover from him, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, but it's the kind of thing that people like Wes Streeting do. They think that they're operating as political geniuses. They do things like that.
Yeah, I'd concur with that view. And I was wondering myself earlier whether he might have released them deliberately as part of the whole Pascal's wager thing of like, well, if it does go south, then I can say that it's something that I've been thinking about. But yeah, maybe we will know one day. Maybe, you say we might never know, but maybe there'll be something that comes out. I'm hopeful in that sense.
Well, we'll never know. We'll never know whether he wrote. I mean, we might. He might become senile and tell people or speak in his sleep or something. But we're overwhelmingly likely to never know whether he wrote them initially.
Yeah.
With that in mind. But I think it's possible that 6 months ago he wrote those, or a year ago, whatever it was, a year and a half, that he wrote those, thinking that one day this stuff might be published, it might be leaked, it might be broadly, everybody might be able to see it. And so I think that the guy is, he's a snake. We all know that. But it's just a question of how snake-like he is.
Well, you mentioned earlier on in the show that he was NUS president or inside NUS, and it always reminds me of the late fantastic Dawn Foster, who said that I'd known Wes since his NUS days, and he's always been a lick-spittle little cunt. So I absolutely love that tweet. It is 10-9, and I appreciate it's been a long show, Kieran. You've had a long day, so I'm not going to drag on the comments. I'm just going to quickly flash up the last three comments about the last show. Graham Sudworth says, in quotations, "We won't be silenced." Yet they yell on GB News to their audience of millions. That is just the modus operandi of the right wing. It's the Lawrence Foxes going on BBC Question Time saying, "I'm being silenced," was given a platform on the BBC. Same with Constantine Kissing, crying about being cancelled, and he was on a state or public broadcaster's flagship show. It is what the right wing love to do. The thing is, though, if you're truly cancelled, you wouldn't know about it. But when you're being told you're being cancelled, then you're not being cancelled. Wooniverse Girl. Fuck yes, Ben, in terms of your fantastic GB News performance. You never let the side down when you're on there. Fantastic stuff. And Jim Speak, I think, he's come back with a nice comment now rather than calling you old, and says, "Kieran's linguistic skills are so on point. How to say more with less heart." That is absolutely true. I concur, because Kieran is absolutely fantastic.
You guys can say whatever you want about my... I'm sorry, I'm in the hotel's curtains. Anytime you want.
He fucked up there.
Better get me off there.
With that, I'm going to hand back to you, Ben. Thank you for all the comments. And yeah,
Superb.
great show.
Thank you very much, Curtis. That's all we have time for. Kieran, thank you very much for joining me. It's been lovely hosting my first show with you. Been absolutely amazing. Can I ask, where can people find you in terms of like social media? Where do you post the most?
You can find me on X, you can find me on X, or you can find me on Instagram. So those are my two social media. So should I have had a handle ready? Should I have had handles ready? But if people could just, if you type in Kieran Andrieu to either of those platforms, you will find me immediately. Oh, it's there.
The spelling's there. It's fine. It's all good.
Oh,
Excellent.
the spelling's there. Great. There we go.
Yes.
That's all you need. You'll find me.
Yes.
And thank you for having me. Please have me back.
Please do come back on. It's been amazing. Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it. It's been a great show. I thought it would be a good show, and it has been. So as we're closing out the show, if you want to help us grow, please go to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. Or if you can't help us financially, just share our content. Hit like, subscribe. It all helps us grow, and sometimes a share or a reposting it on your own socials can be even more valuable than a monetary donation. It's all about just bringing our politics into a new era. So, you've been watching Normal Ireland, our live show that airs at 7:30 p.m. every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Have a good evening.